In this video we're going to have a look at selections. Now the problem with selections is that you just want one ice cream and not all of them at the same time. So that is what we're going into today. Now of course we're not talking about ice cream, we're talking about geographic information, but let's make another culinary example. For example, if you want to go to a restaurant, you want to make a selection first. For example, which kind of restaurant do you prefer? Do you prefer Italian, Chinese, Indian, or perhaps Greek or French restaurant, or the Dutch cuisine? So you have to pick your choice there. Another thing is that you can also have a look at the online review scores for the restaurant. So you only want to eat in a restaurant that has 4 or more stars out of 5. Those kind of things we call select by attributes. So we're looking at the table and we're looking at the values that are stored for each object. Another way of selecting is where do you want to go to a restaurant? For example, you could say in Delft, but Delft is still a pretty big place, so you could also say in Delft in the city center or in another area of Delft. You could also have a look at train stations. If you come by public transport, you say I don't want to be further away than 500 meters from the train station, which in Delft of course gives you 500 meter circles around the 2 stations of Delft, Delft main station and the Delft campus station. Those are the things we call select by location. Now let's go into a GIS example. So when you're wondering what the use case for a selection is, for example, it could give you an answer to the question which municipalities in the Netherlands have over 100,000 inhabitants. Or if you want to make a selection of the smaller municipalities, which municipalities have less than 20,000 inhabitants, for example. This answer could also be the base for a next question. For example, if you have the municipalities with over 100,000 inhabitants, how many campsites are there in those municipalities? Those kind of questions can be answered by combinations of selections. So we're going to have a look at that. So how do they work? Basically, if you look at select by attributes, you look at SQL, where the select from and where parts are grayed out, so you don't really have to type them every time. If you do a select by attributes, you immediately go to the where clause. So you can say the number of inhabitants is over 100,000, or the name of the municipality is exactly Delft, or in the third example, it starts with an A, or it starts with an A and the number of inhabitants is over 100,000. So those kind of SQL queries you can use to make a selection. So let's have a look how that works in QGIS. So here we have the municipalities, and this is the dataset from the Statistics Office of the Netherlands. So if I open the attribute table for this dataset, you see that apart from the typical information on a municipality, you also have a lot of demographic data here. One of the columns here is the number of inhabitants. Now these columns, of course, you can, if you click the name of the column, it will order by low to high values, or the other way around, from high to low values. If you do it this way, you see the result that you probably expect: Amsterdam, Rotterdam, The Hague first, and the rest of municipalities later. So let's have a look. If I want to make a selection, what happens? Well, first of all, you need to know that a selection is a temporary thing, and that means that it will give you some visual clue as to which municipalities are selected. The visual clue here is yellow, the color yellow. So most of the buttons that have the color yellow included here somewhere have something to do with selections. Now this one is a simple one: select features by area or a single click. So if I want to select a municipality, I just do this and one is selected. If I want to select more, I could also draw a box around that and you select a lot of municipalities. Now nothing happens with the data, it's just a temporary state. It is selected, and it means that you can do something else with it. Apart from this button with the box, you could also select by polygon, for example. if we want to select using a query, we use the select by attributes option. First I have to deselect these, and here you see something that is select features by value, but there's one here with the epsilon, select features by expression, and that's the one we're going to use quite often. This will bring up a screen where you can have your function here, your expression. You see a lot of options here, but the one you're looking for is fields and values, and of course we have the number of inhabitants here. And you can just click this here and it will come up with the field name. And we said we wanted to select municipalities which have more than 100,000 inhabitants, so I'll just type larger than 100,000 and I press select features. Now you see there are 32 matching features select. Let's have a look. Those are the municipalities that have over 100,000 inhabitants. Now if you're familiar with the municipalities in the Netherlands, you recognize that most of these municipalities have a larger city in them. There are a few exceptions. For example, Westland here, it has a number of smaller cities. But most of the municipalities here are a larger city like Rotterdam or The Hague or Delft. So that is a simple way of selecting. What else happens is that if you have the table here, the attribute table, that you see that a few of these are now blue here. That means that they have a selected object. So you see Amsterdam, you see Rotterdam, Den Haag, and a few others, Utrecht, included here. So this is a selection. Now what can we do with a selection? But for example, we could select all the campsites that are within these selected municipalities. So let's try that out. Now I've loaded a dataset with campsites in my project as well. What I could now do is select those campsites that are within the selected municipalities. So there's a few options to do that. One of the places where you can find that is here by select by location under the research tools. And here you always get some kind of a simple menu. Here you say, for example, select features from the campsites that intersect the municipalities and use for the municipalities only the selected features. So I only want those campsites that are within the boundaries of those selected municipalities, so the municipalities with more than 100,000 inhabitants. And I create a new selection for the campsites. I run this one. It gives you a warning that there is no spatial index for this layer. That is not a problem. As you see, it was pretty fast, this analysis. And now you see that, especially if I switch off the municipalities layer, you see that the yellow campsites are the ones that are selected. Now if this was the exact question that I was supposed to answer, in that case I could just show only the selected features. So I see these are all kind of campsites that are selected now. For now I could just copy the selected rows. I could go to my spreadsheet program and paste them in here, and I'd have the answer to the question. And I could just hand this over to a person that needed the answer to this question. So that is the kind of thing you could do with a selection. It's pretty simple, but we're going to see in the next few videos what else you can do with a selection. There is one more thing that I'd like to show you. You might have noticed for the municipalities that there's a small filter sign here. There's another way of selecting, and it is called setting a filter. It is in the source tab for the layer properties, and as you can see here, I've got a provider feature filter set to water is nay. This data set comes with the complete municipalities, including the water parts. I always filter them out because Most of the time I'm just interested in the land part. So the simple way of doing that, and also if you have another data set where you only need a few parts from, is set a filter in the source tab, put a query on it, and in this case I know that it is water is no, and that will just filter out everything that you don't need or want in your project.